I'm blown away once again. Our next speaker is the only gentleman in our lineup. And I jokingly say that Women's Entrepreneur Network is about 95% women and some really smart men. And I would categorize our next speaker, Geoff, as one of those really smart men. So Geoff, are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you. You're very kind, Haley. I do appreciate that. I always try to spend as much time as I possibly can with people who are different than I am, because I know how to be a middle-aged white guy, right? And so I have that perspective down pretty well pat. But learning from people of different age groups, different genders, different races, different backgrounds, different cultures, it really helps me feel grounded and understand what I can bring. And where I still have to grow and find new places to interact. So I'm grateful for the introduction, and I'm also grateful for the opportunity here today to spend a little time with all of you. I'm going to take a moment and share my screen here. All right, hopefully you can see this. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about one of the books that I really enjoy. It's called Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. It's written by Dr. John C. Maxwell, and I was really surprised, although I probably shouldn't be, by how well my topic that I'm bringing to the table sort of connects in with each of the various topics that were already presented, from Beth talking about happiness and how to bring that, and from Cheryl speaking about emotional intelligence and being able to understand our own emotions and those of others. Just talking about people learning differently, thinking about the way that they may have different perspectives, or they may have different ways of understanding the world, but that doesn't make them any less valuable as an individual. And then Charlene, you talking about connecting with other people and opening your heart and opening your family and opening your space. Those are all really, really powerful things from my perspective. So I was really grateful to see that I wasn't going to be completely out in left field talking about something like this today. A little bit about John's book. Everyone Communicates, Few Connect is broken down into 5 principles and 5 practices. So there's way more than we could possibly cover here today. But I will make 2 promises to you, right? The first is that I will give you something that you can use right away through what I'm going to present here today. And then the second is, if you want to work more directly with me in a more formal way, I'll give you information on how to do that. So hopefully that's a fair enough use of your time here today. We're all leaders in sort of one way or another. Leadership comes down to one thing, and that being influence. Leadership is influence, and influence depends on our ability to connect with other people. Nobody can change anybody else. The only person you can change is yourself. Now, sometimes we come under the misunderstanding of I'm changing somebody else. You may be building an environment that causes them to want to change themselves. You may be providing things and sowing seeds into their mind in the way that they grasp the world and understand what's going on, but you can't change that person. Only that person can change themselves. I want to talk about how we need people, right? We really can't do anything in today's world on our own. We need to be able to connect. In fact, as human beings, I think we crave that connection and be able to connect and influence other people in order to be able to succeed. But sometimes we experience a little bit of friction in our day, and that comes down to leadership or connecting or influence, those sorts of things. I thought this was an appropriate screen for the Women's Entrepreneurial Network, because you can obviously tell that it's a woman who's in charge in that room, right? Everybody's looking at her. She has that confident look on her face. Most of the people in the room are women. And so I thought it would be a great picture to include here because of the audience here today. But what I want to let you know is that the ability to connect is 100% a teachable skill. You can learn to connect. You can learn to lead. You can learn to improve your ability to influence people if you want to. And there's a common misconception that certain people are born with the ability to connect. And while that may be true to a certain point, right? Some people are just more open. They have the ability to see the goodness in other people, recognize that goodness in other people, and connect with that and influence that. it's also something that you can learn. It's within your reach, but it might be outside of your comfort zone. What's interesting is some people don't even give any thought whatsoever to developing their ability to connect. They don't see it as a skill or something that's important. And it wouldn't be such a problem if people weren't so emotional, right? Human beings are emotional creatures at heart. It comes from our own, I call it our own BS. And I don't mean like the stuff that you find out in the field. I mean, it's your belief system. One of the other programs that I teach talks about understanding your belief system. So I'll leave that for a later time if you're interested. But we often kid ourselves that we're rational, logical human beings, but that's a facade. We're emotional creatures. Emotions rule our lives. And usually what we do when we make a decision is we make a decision based on emotion, and then we find logic to back it up. Right? Here's why I did this particular thing. Here's why I like this specific individual. Here's why I really want that new vehicle or whatever it is. Why is this a problem? Well, if you ever heard of something like, he does that if you push his buttons, or you really need to know how to get her going. We can all be logical in certain situations, but there are others, with a certain trigger can flip our switch and we can't help ourselves, and the red cloud descends and the emotional storm blows through us. Just yesterday, I ended up in a very heated conversation on Facebook about the order of operations for solving math problems, right? Like, why would that really get me fired up? I don't know why, but it does. Each of us has sort of these things that that call out to us, that cause us to think about things or get fired up in some new and interesting or different way. Connecting is really the ability to identify with people and relate to them in such a way that it increases our influence with them. Some people do connect intuitively. They have a high interpersonal intelligence, and they seem to value people automatically. Some people recognize that connecting is important, but they lack the tools and the techniques to do it. They need to learn to do what others can do intuitively. And some people don't even recognize connecting as important at all. They think they can do it all on their own. They don't need other people. Like, why rely on others when it's quicker to do it myself if you want something done right? They're only going to let you down anyway. The better we are able to connect with other people, though, the better our results will be. I sort of think of it like when I walk into the kitchen and I'm carrying all the groceries. And if I'm going to cook dinner, I can't do it while I'm still holding all the groceries, right? I have to put the groceries down first, sort them out, find the pieces that I need. I can't do everything all at once. Well, maybe we'll take a different example here. What about a rocket scientist, right? It wouldn't really apply to them, would it? Which skill is rarer, a rocket scientist or someone who can lead a team of rocket scientists to produce meaningful results in a coordinated fashion, on time, on budget, right? Or the CEO of Rocket Scientists Incorporated even. Often more brilliant people can be a little more difficult to lead, but we do need people, and people are emotional creatures. Anyone can learn how to make every communication an opportunity for a powerful connection. In my job at one of the administrative assistant's desks, she has this little sign that says, "Don't explain things so people can understand them. Explain things so they can't misunderstand them." It's like any other skill, right? You really need to learn the skill and you really need to practice it. I'll share an example. We were in the midst of a large technology rollout. We were replacing, several hundred PCs and that sort of thing in a big corporate setting, windows all around us and people scattered everywhere. And we were trying to find out who the boss was or where the boss had gone off to. Everybody had walkie-talkies with us. And so somebody picks up their walkie-talkie and they're like, "Does anybody know where Teresa is?" Teresa heard the call on the walkie-talkie and she picked up hers and she says, "I'm over here," right, on a walkie-talkie. So her voice resonated out of everybody's walkie-talkies. Nobody could really tell where she was. You couldn't tell which corner of the room she was coming from. She realized this, and then she said, "By the windows." Okay, so we're in a corporate office building. There's windows on all four sides of the room. Still not helpful. She was communicating, but she wasn't connecting with us. We still weren't able to figure out what it was that she was trying to tell us. So we all had a good laugh about it, and she finally realized what a different way to help people find where she was. But that's just, oftentimes we think we're out there just providing information that's useful, but if we don't understand the audience, if we don't understand the situation, it'll make it tricky for us to actually make that connection. Here's the things that I think you'll find useful to take out of today's session. There's really 5 factors for connecting that I'll cover today. Of course, you may think about some others. The first I'm going to talk about is relationships. Relationships are who you know, right? Borrow it from someone who has credibility with them. Who you know can open doors for you to connect with someone, right? We all know Haley Gray. Haley Gray has a group with 70,000 people in it, right? So if you want to know other people, you can connect through Haley Gray, and you can borrow some of her credibility until you take the opportunity to build your own with them. One of my most powerful questions to ask, especially when you meet somebody new and you hit it off, is, who do you know that I should know? Oftentimes they'll think, oh, you sound like you would be a good fit for this other person. You never know where those connections will lead. I know it's led to several opportunities for business with me, including some work for the American Red Cross down here in Florida. Next is insight, which is what you know. If you have an area of expertise and you share generously with others, like our speakers have so far today, and like Haley does all the time in her groups, you give people reason to respect you, and people will develop a sense of connection with you. Third has to do with success, and this is about what you've done. So who you know, what have you done? People want to be successful. They seek out others who have accomplished something, and they want to get their advice. If you're successful in anything you do, there'll be people who will want to listen to you and connect with you. Fourth is ability. So what you can do. If you have a high level of ability in any area, others may want to connect with you because of that ability. Excellence connects, right? Think about Michael Jordan, right? He's made way more money from endorsements than he ever did playing basketball. And it's not because he knew anything about the products he was endorsing. It's because of what he could do with a basketball. And so if you shine in a particular area, there are other ways that you can leverage that. And then the fifth area that I'm talking about here is sacrifice. How have you lived? If you've made sacrifices, Charlene gave a great example of this. You have sacrifices. Maybe you've suffered tragedy or overcome some painful obstacles. If you've been able to remain positive yet humble in the midst of life difficulties, people will connect with you on that point. As I mentioned, these are just 5. I'm sure you can think of other things that people connect. But I want to talk about influence. We used to think that it was all about being the best. If you want to lead, you have to be the best. If you want people to listen to you, you've got to impress them. But influence really isn't about impressing people. In fact, oftentimes you could be really good at doing a particular job, and the workplace might say, oh, you're really good at doing that. You should lead a team of people doing that. Now, there's this concept called the Peter Principle that says you will be promoted to the level of your incompetence. Right? So oftentimes, if you have great skill at doing a thing, that doesn't necessarily translate to being able to lead other people in how to do that. Sometimes it's because you don't have the leadership skills, but a lot of times it's because you don't know why you're good at doing that thing. It just may come naturally to you. And so if you were to try and break that down and help other people understand that, that could be really difficult for you to do. I remember we said earlier that people are emotional beings. We're not principally logical. We're principally emotional. So to understand how to connect with people emotionally, we need to understand that. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. And Jess, I think you gave a really great example of this, right? The letters are there on the page. The words are printed out there, but the individual perceives that in a different way. And they're not able to get the idea or the thought or the information into their mind in the way that that's perceived or the way that it's laid out there. Let me do a quick illustration. I'm sure you may have seen this before. Here's a picture, right? Some of you may say, oh, I see a nice vase. Some of you may say, oh, I see 2 faces looking at one another. You know, if I ask you, or as I spoke each item here, maybe you saw the vase first and the faces second, maybe it was vice versa. What's interesting is that it all depends on what you're aware of when you first look at it. It's the same picture though, right? So same picture viewed differently by different people. So if the picture is the same, then the difference has to be in the individuals. There's something different that's happened to the average adult, and it changes the way that we see things. That difference is called conditioning. So like I said, we don't see the world as it is. We see the world the way we are. And this goes a long way towards explaining why we don't get what we want. We get what we are. Now, the implications for this are enormous, especially as it relates to communication, because we all see the world differently. This is a simple example, but it illustrates a powerful point. We're all different. We all see the world differently. We all have different beliefs, different values, different things are important to us, different passions, expectations, and tolerances. To ignore this when we're trying to connect is to miss the whole point of connecting. And connectors understand this. They know they have to connect with people on common ground. Now, if I talk to you about my beliefs or values and they're not yours, you're probably not that interested intellectually. There's certainly not going to be an emotional resonance. You may not relate to me. You may not have a good feeling about me. Worse yet, if I violate your beliefs while I do it, not only do you not get a good feeling about me, you may actually get a bad feeling. Nobody really wants to be told that what they believe is wrong. If you challenge someone's beliefs directly, they're going to get their back up. And if they're core beliefs that they really, really value, they may even want to hurt you. So if you want to connect with someone, you have to get to know them. You have to go first. You need to build and connect on common ground. Now we're about out of time here, and I know we're going to have to leave it here for today. And I've covered some of the information that I hope you found interesting. Some of the ideas that you can start using right away. Normally, when I'm in a group of people, some people raise their hand, say, yeah, that was interesting. I enjoyed it. I picked up a few key tips or whatever. The problem is it doesn't really have the impact it needs to have. And the simple reason is that change is not an event, it's a process. We overestimate the event and we underestimate the process of making it happen. And an event which is important, but it won't develop you as a communicator and a connector. I wish we had more time to talk about this book together. I'd love to share some of the other principles and get your perspectives on it as well. But I do want to honor our time here together. And so we can continue to communicate and connect the way we have, or we can choose to intentionally develop these skills together. Along these lines, I'm starting a new mastermind in January of next year. It's called Discover Connection. You'll notice DISC is capitalized and it's in the colorful letters. That's because part of the program is going through a MAXWELL certification using DISC. And I'm certified trainer through the John Maxwell team in DISC. There are a lot of different personality profiles out here. DISC was actually the first one that came out that was to help people understand if they were not listed in some sort of abnormal category, right? How do regular people operate? How do regular people communicate with one another? One of my favorite parts about this, and I think will resonate with all of you, is that the guy who invented the DISC program, along with his wife, he also invented Wonder Woman character. So he helped design and built that because he felt back in the time when they were building this, that there were not enough strong female role models, especially when it came to graphic novels, graphic books, that sort of thing. And so that to me is very interesting that they had that perspective and brought that together. That does it for my time together with all of you. If you're interested in joining the Discover Connection program, I limit it to 12 people because it's not about me getting up and speaking. It's about all of the 12 people in that group building relationships, connecting with one another, and taking that out into the world. So, Haley, thank you for the time. Ladies and gentlemen who are watching, thank you so much for your kind attention. I appreciate it. I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much. Let's give Geoff a round of applause. Thank you, Geoff.
Thank you, everyone.
I think it's, the communication thing is where our lives and our businesses either succeed or fail. And, that to me has become abundantly clear in the last 18 months or so in my business as we've been working on scaling. And as we grow the team, I'm just seeing, I knew how important the communication piece was before, but all of the process, everything hinges on communication. So thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. I really appreciate it.